What's up, everyone? I'm Scott,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to Liquid Carnage. My friend, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. And thanks. I'm doing. Had a great weekend, and now I'm enjoying my time with Scott Kern, baby.
That's right. It's a beautiful weekend. What I think will be the first of a lot of beautiful weekends with the spring season almost upon us. But from the beauty that is 70 degrees outside, as we record this, I'm in the middle of a storm.
Oh yeah.
Howling winds, rain's coming. So if we lose you on the recording, it's this always happens whenever the wind blows really bad. I think we've learned that over the years.
Yeah. No, it's a normal thing, so we're used to it. But for our listeners who never experienced windy weather, this is one of the pitfalls of windy weather. Sometimes reception goes right out the door.
That's exactly it. If we're face to face in person, it's not a problem. But with our setup for Liquid Carnage, it's an occupational hazard. But we
I know.
digress, so we roll.
Yeah, the big news this week. This is totally off topic, but the big news this week in TV was the defamation suit against Fox News, and we found out how Fox News really, what they really think of their, um, what they really think of their news stories. As much as they propose one thing, they think something totally different. I don't know if you saw any of those news reports, but it was insane. It was insane how much someone's willing to sell their soul
I
for
did see that.
ratings. You know what I mean? For
And
ratings.
I thought that was interesting because you're right. They sold their soul for ratings, and to me, what they're saying on camera, you know, getting everybody whipped up into a frenzy, and then saying complete opposite off camera is just it's mind blowing.
Well, what I don't understand is what person what person does that where they know something is false and yet they say it anyways. I don't get it. I don't get normal people don't do that.
Well, I think you're seeing. I think you're seeing the reason why they're calling a lot of the extremer portions of the right wing of the political parties extremists and cultists because they believe this weird doctrine, and I think it all goes back to QAnon. Whoever the hell started that's a freaking marketing genius because that person has a cult of people following them and people that you would think are very sane. But then you hear them talk about politics, and you're like, "Oh shit, you are a raving nutbag."
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if we'll ever get. I mean, the genie's out of the bottle, so we'll never get back to the days where you watch a TV show and everyone had a good message and everyone a wonderful, honest, homegrown message. Everything is going to be a spin, or oh, I'm only speaking to the people who watch my show because they want to hear lies. They don't want to hear the truth. So I got
Yeah.
to speak to them. I got to lie. I mean, I don't think we'll ever get back to the days where when something is said on TV, people believe it and it's true.
Yeah, I think those days are long gone. I think just the way that media is controlled now, it's hard to ever imagine how we'll get back to those days if that's even an option. And
Well, and I think Fox has done a really good job of, even though they say that those shows are opinion shows, they get sold to people as the news, the
yeah,
news, and I think that differentiation is Fox. For what it's worth, has done a good job of differentiating that to merging that into one thing. It's an opinion show, but when Tucker Carlson says it, it's truth, it's news, we believe it. Why would Tucker Carlson lie to us?
yeah. Well,
Um,
you put enough zeros at the back of a check, he'll say anything to anybody. So
Well, and I mean, I mean, I will be interested to see if that Dominion wins that lawsuit against them. I mean, it seems like they have the evidence to make a strong case that Fox News knew they were lying about something and they were purporting those lies for increased ratings, increased revenue.
yeah, and I think for what Dominion was actually suing them for, it was a billion. It was a few $1 billion. It was
1.6 billion, which is, I mean, Fox News, they say Fox News itself has about like 9 billion in cash. So while it wouldn't necessarily, stop the news organization from performing, it would definitely be a signal to anyone saying you can't do that anymore.
yeah. I think at the end of
So
the day, that's really the priority. Is you need to send that signal to make sure that people understand. You can't go out making shit up. I mean, you just can't. You know.
And isn't there a fine line though? Because you watch any of these TV shows, there's a margin, even in the most wholesome show you can think of, there's a margin of non-truth to it, or there's a margin of shadiness that gets brushed over
You know,
by other things.
it's funny. I think if you look at the different eras of TV, I think you're absolutely right, and it might be more blurred now, but with the invention of streaming services and box sets of DVDs of seasons of old shows, you have the option to watch shows that used to air weekly and then in syndication much faster than you would before, where you'd have to wait a week in between shows to see what happens next. And I've been watching the Andy Griffith Show on Paramount Plus in the morning.
Oh wow! Okay. Wow, that's old school.
It's old school. It's I've grown 50s, up on it.
Yeah.
That's one of those shows that I've always it's never gotten old to me as I've grown up. I've probably seen them all, but I've never seen them all consecutively. So as I do my morning routines, I have my iPad in the background, so I'm kind of watching as I'm doing emails and prepping for the day. And I've noticed, that show is always billed as a very wholesome show. Andy Griffith, very wholesome comedian, man, went on to do Matlock. Very, just a very good actor. Probably the voice of his generation for the South, when it came to television. And his trusty sidekick, Barney Fife.
Barney Fife, the
Don
one
Knotts,
bullet in the pocket.
One bullet in the pocket. Don Knotts won a lot of Emmys for playing Barney Fife. And
okay.
To me, it's very interesting because I watched that show, and Andy Griffith always plays, since he's the single father, he's widowed. Even when he's they called it courting women back then, because it's the South, North Carolina in the 60s. Even when he's courting Miss Crump, he's very polite. He doesn't talk to anybody about it. He never does anything in public. In fact, when he kissed her in public, they thought she was engaged, or they were engaged.
Yeah, right.
But then, Barney has always had Thelma Lou. That's always been his girl.
Oh, yeah, Thelma Lou. That's his girl. That's right. Okay.
But throughout this whole series, he's always calling and talking to Juanita from the diner. He's always trying to get her to go out. And he's always saying, well, when we go to the drive-thru, we'll do this, or I'll take you out, we'll go here. So if Thelma Lou really is his girl, he's got a side
two-timing her.
Yeah, but it's done on this wholesome show, so they never talk about the fact that he's a two-timing man whore. I mean, but today's world, I'm pretty sure that's almost he get canceled for, right?
Well, how about this? Depending on the show, it might be an award-winning show. I mean, wasn't there that Scandal show where the president was having an affair with his press secretary, or was having an affair, in the show? The show was called Scandal. I mean, it was sold as the president is having an affair with someone within his inner circle.
To me, it was just very interesting. It's to me, it's still a good show. I still enjoy it. It makes me laugh though, because that show is always so wholesome. My mom still talks about it as a very wholesome show that she would love to watch. She came up from school when she was in junior high and high school and so forth, and I can see where it is 90% of the time. 90% of the time, you're absolutely right. It's this great show of a simpler, more gentle time in America. And
that's a good point. It's like it's a view of a simpler time, and you're right. The reality doesn't match the show.
No, it doesn't. I mean, and the underlying things of like what Barney Fife does and so forth. But the other thing I think is very interesting. I think I've seen the same actor play like 10 different characters 4 seasons in.
Oh,
and to me it's funny because it's Sam the Butcher from the Brady Bunch is the guy that I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
I think back in those days, the studios just had contracted actors that would do bit parts in every show, and since they didn't have the ability to stream shows like they did today, actors didn't play just one character they played multiple characters different times throughout the season. And I think I'm up to like 10 times I've seen Sam the Butcher from the Brady Bunch play a different actor or a different role on the Andy Griffith Show. And to me, every time I see him, it's just funny. I assume he's always going to be in the show at some point, just as like a master of disguise.
Well, and I mean, and that show is kind of funny too because don't they have a recurring character that's like the town drunk
Otis, yeah.
who Otis, yeah, who lives in the they just like they leave the jail open.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think that would go over in today's world? A recurring character that was a drunk that just stayed in jail all the time.
I don't think you could do it. I don't think that show works today. You know,
Yeah.
Even if you did like a small town sheriff's office like this one, it just doesn't fly. And I'm not sure, even if you go back to the 60s when this was filmed, I'm not sure that even flies then. I think it's a very whimsical take on small town America more than an actual, reality based sitcom.
Yeah, like you never saw it in those shows that a small southern town in the 50s and the 60s probably would have had some anti-racial groups that were a fixture in the towns that they were in, right?
Yeah.
Like you notice that there's not a lot of black people in Mayberry.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of black people in Mayberry. There's probably also not a lot. You don't see a lot of like Ku Klux Klan or Klansmen or Jim Crow laws going on. So it's almost like they someone in the network said, "Look, whatever you put on TV has to be wholesome, and it cannot in any way reflect the real problems that are going on in the United States."
Yeah.
Because I would think that back in the 50s and the 60s, in a small rural southern town, there were problems
Oh yeah,
of social unrest and those kind of things.
This show filmed from 1960 to 1968, so that is right before the start of the Vietnam War, coming out of the Korean War.
Right.
We're kind of getting settled in
right before the social or the civil rights movement. So that the civil rights movement is kind of in its infancy. It hasn't really started yet.
Yeah, and you think about with the 50s, where the 50s were also a very wholesome time, just with their television and everything, what they're trying to portray. But if you look at it through today's context, and I just watching it now, it makes me laugh. It's like, these guys, like Andy and Barney, I mean, they must be the town whores too.
Well, they're single bachelors, so
they are.
Every woman back then wants a husband, so
that's it. They want to
live it up.
They preach all the, well, someday Opie's going to want a mother, this and that, and he's not telling Opie who he's going out with or what's going on, but you damn well know they're, with A and B at home, he's taking them to the courthouse or or he's playing a road game. It's, you just figure out all this stuff's going on, even though it's not being talked about. It just makes me laugh. And then you contrast it with something like Married with Children, which was a very edgy show for its time in the late 80s and 90s, but still at the heart of it, I would argue that's probably just as wholesome, if not a little bit more wholesome, when you talk about the family dynamics, because for as much as they were dysfunctional, they were functional. That they fought all the time, but they stuck together. They stayed as a family unit, and they worked through their issues. They didn't just say, "Screw it, I'm done."
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw an interview with Ed O'Neill, and he was talking about with someone how he got the job as Bundy, Al Bundy, and he said he went. I guess they had tried out a lot of actors, but most of the actors were trying to do the character like Ralph Kramden.
Mm-hmm.
And he took a different approach. He said, it kind of reminded me of my uncle. An uncle who is so burned out in life that when bad things happen, he just accepts them that, yeah, of course that should happen. My life is shit. You know what I mean? Like, and so when he did the reading, he played the part like that where, hey, oh, your dog just got ran over. Okay, that makes sense. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
like taking it from this is what natural life is. Like, I know that bad things happen to me. I'm married. I have children. Of course,
Yeah.
I'm going to have bad things happen.
Yeah.
I'm a shoe salesman. I mean, come on. Like, I've resorted my life. My best days were my high school football. You know, that's and so maybe that's why that show was, even though it was edgy and kind of racy in a lot of areas, people could relate because that's what real life was all about.
Do you think that's more of a relatable show than a show like, I don't know, Friends?
Um, I I don't know. I think that
Or is it two different audiences?
well, I think that it touches on obviously different. Yeah, it's a different audience per se. I mean, you know, and I think that probably does make a difference. But I do think that both shows do have one thing in common, is that it gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we'd love to be able to see or say or do in our lives, and but it also be like mythic, you know, like I'm sure that so many husbands would love to tell their wives what Al Bundy told Peg, right? I mean, just to you know, be able to come off and her not, you know, throw him out of the house and slap him around a little bit, you know, that dynamic. I'm sure they would love to see it. Just as the same as I'm sure there were a lot of people who would love to have had a circle of friends like they had, where all of them seemed to have money, all of them seemed to have, you know, good lives, and they were social together, and you know, I mean, we talked about that just between amongst ourselves, that you know what we had in Kingman when we were all in Kingman together was kind of hard to find. I mean, we had a pretty good circle of friends that we always did stuff together, and a lot of people were, I think, not, you know, jealous or envious, but they admired that we
Yeah.
um you know, so obviously different audiences, but the reflection, and maybe with the Andy Griffith Show too, is that it was wholesome, it was the best ideals, and the best ideals may not necessarily reflect what the reality is.
Yeah, you know, it's just kind of because it's funny to me just watching the show because I enjoy. It's a very simple show, you know. It's just watching like Gomer and Goober and
Yeah,
Otis and all these quirky characters that don't fly in today's world.
no,
They really don't, but they're classic characters, and and I say they don't fly. It's, you know, they're not going to be canceled. It's just I think they're not on a level that's of sophistication that would get people to buy into them. They're not Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother. You know,
right?
there's not some complex backstory of why he always wears suits, or you know why they're a womanizer or an alcoholic. It's like this is Otis. He's the town drunk in a dry county, and he knows when he ties one on, he goes to the jailhouse because he doesn't want to go home to his wife. So we leave the jail cell open for him on weekends.
And we don't even question the fact that there's a wife at home who says, "Dude, you're a drunk. You don't come
Right?
home. Why am I staying with you?" We don't even you don't even question that. You think, "Oh, this is so cute." You know,
Yeah.
like you said, we don't question the fact that, wait, Barney has got Thelma Lou, and he's also talking to other people. You know, we don't. It's like, do we not want to ask the question of that, or
Yeah.
you know, and maybe it's like you know, they try to put it in a way that you can admire the story and you can admire the messages that, you know, between a single father and a son, about how to
Yeah.
raise him to be a good kid, and you can kind of pass over some of the realities that get swept under the carpet
Yeah. Or just glossed over.
or glossed over. You know, you know, like, you know, I've always thought that shows, like my one of my favorite shows is Boston Legal,
Hmm.
and I enjoy the watching the show. I enjoy watching the two characters interact with each other. I'm okay with not asking the question, well, where do they, you know, where do they go to the grocery store food, and where do they go do their laundry, and you know, you don't even ask those questions about real life. It's like a separation from real life,
Yeah.
you know, a way to get away from real life and watch something that is an ideal versus the
Yeah.
reality.
And maybe that's what all this is. It's you know the fantasy that TV is. You have 30 minutes, especially back in the 60s, to get away, to go to a place where it's simple, it's folksy. They use their aw shucks and golly gee, personas, and it makes you feel better about life. And
Yeah.
what I find interesting about like television shows back then versus like what we have now, it's those were 30 episode seasons.
Right.
And they didn't take weeks off. Like they went from mid September every week until May,
Right.
and they took no time off for episodes or whatever else. So I just thought that was interesting too. It's like, wow, that's like they didn't do like Halloween specials or a very Christmas Andy Griffith. It's like, hey, this is the story of the week. Doesn't matter if it airs on December 24th or you know April 15th. It's no major holiday, no nothing. It's just another day in the life of Mayberry.
That just kind of sparked a question because we have reality TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch reality TV, and even that is not real.
Yeah,
It's not like how people really like they say that all the time, like on this Real Housewives show or the Kardashians, that how they have to build up a drama on TV is not necessarily the reality of who they are and how they act and what they do. Even though we're told it's reality TV, this is really the life and the life of the Kardashians, but we're okay with ignoring that that may not be what is reality, what is real.
do you remember like the first reality show that you're like, yeah, you know what, I enjoy this?
The first one that I remember was Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire.
Or
You ever remember that show?
you talking about like Joe Millionaire or Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire?
Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? It was a show where it was kind of like the start of The Bachelor and Bachelorette. But it was one guy who he was only a millionaire on paper. He owned a house that was $1 million. So it wasn't even that he was a millionaire. He owned a house that was, I mean, his net worth was like $2 or $3 million, but it wasn't like he was a millionaire like we would think today.
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of women who were vying to, be his wife. And that was the first reality TV that I remember. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire is what it was, or it was
I,
something like that. Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire?
well, MTV
And
got started with it though, the Real World back in the '90s.
The Real World, yeah, The Real World. It was the same. I mean, I think the other show was on one of the major channels, but yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
And I was fascinated. Like, I can't believe they're going to try to force these two people to marry when they don't even know each other. Yeah, but I remember the Real World because they lived in a house. That was like the first time people lived in a house,
like seven
and
people to pick to live in a house where
and they
no.
were young usually,
Yeah,
and they all tried to commingle, and some of them dated, and some of them didn't, and they got in fights.
yeah. See, and that was the mid '90s. Then you got into the 2000s, and I don't know how scripted the Real World was. I like to think that was still so primitive as far as reality TV was that it wasn't scripted. They were literally just watching young people try to figure out how to live together in a new city, and that was it. But then you get this stuff like what was like there's a whole bunch of reality shows on MTV in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like the Laguna Beach Hills stuff, where
Oh yeah, yeah,
that's where the scripted reality show started to come in, and that's
yeah.
where you found your Kardashians and whatever else. But when you start talking about the Millionaire game shows, my first recollection of that was Joe Millionaire, which was I think was the same time as when you're thinking of. But that was the guy who women thought he was a millionaire. He's a good looking dude, and at the end of the day, he was a construction worker that made like $10 an hour.
Yeah, and they
And
were trying to build true love.
yeah, like are you here for true love or are you here for a millionaire? And I think at the end of the day, like they got to the finals, and I remember this one because it was controversial. Like they had like the beautiful blonde that that's when you don't want him to pick, but you think he's going to pick, and the TV wants you to know that he's gonna pick her. And then the brunette that she's cute, but she's quirky, and she might be able to actually deal with the fact that he's not a millionaire. And I think he picked that one, if I remember right. Like he picked the brunette, not the blonde, and it shocked the world.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and then she even like dated him for a little while after the show ended, but I think that's more to save face than actually say, well, I want to give him a chance.
We started this episode with Fox News, obviously. Do you think that maybe the issue is that we as a society do not want to see brutal, honest truth?
Oh, I'd agree.
Maybe that's the thing, is that we're okay with not recognizing some of the truths of, like, the Andy Griffith Show, Friends, and some of these other like, any show you want to talk about. We're okay with not. We're willing to gloss over the fact that it's not totally authentic because we want to hear what we want to hear. Like
If you can
Fox
bury
News
your head in the sand,
listeners,
absolutely.
yeah, Fox News listeners don't care. Like, during that time, they don't want to hear that Biden won, so they're okay with hearing whatever story, even if it's made up, that he didn't win, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's like with TV too. We don't want to hear the truth. We don't want to see shows that are actually about, you know truth. And
Unless it's on
you know
Truth TV.
unless it's on True TV, or it's a crime drama, a crime
Yeah.
documentary, like true crime. We love true crime, but you know what I mean. Like, maybe the fault is in us. We like. I'm sure that when they made Andy Griffith, right, they thought, oh man, we're going to make a wholesome show about a single father and his son and all these quirky little characters that are all happy and no one ever has any, grief, and no one has any sadness. Like, do you ever see Opie ever break down that his mom's died?
No.
Never talks about it. You never see Andy uh, go through emotional turmoil that his wife has passed away and he's left with a young son by himself. You don't see any of that. Maybe we don't want to see that stuff. We live it, so we don't want to see it on our TVs.
It's funny to me because as we get to wrap up today's show, you talk about the truth in reality television, and we don't want the truth as it's happening. Clearly, if we're more interested in documentaries on serial killers or horrific crimes of the past, we want the truth of how things really happened 20 years ago versus what's happening now. And that's a stark contrast to what we had when we had the Andy Griffith Show or Married with Children, just for example, because those were, even the 80s with Married with Children, was a different time, a more wholesome time. And for as dysfunctional as that family was for the time, by today's standards, that's a pretty solid family unit.
Yeah. You think about it. They survived all of those quirky things that the family would do that we would chuckle at. Yet they were married with children.
Yep.
you know, uh, and so yeah. You
It's
got
just,
me thinking, buddy. You got
it's
me
just,
thinking because
it's just something I
I
noticed. Something it's
no,
interesting to me.
it's interesting. It's interesting as we talk about it because I think about most of the shows. Um, that maybe that's why, like, movies like the Avengers and stuff are so popular, because it's action. We don't have to care that it's true, if it's true or not. We don't
Well,
have to care that
you,
there's any reality to it whatsoever.
no,
It's purely just, in fact, we don't want it to be true. We
you
don't
talk about
want it.
movies like that, and the reality, it was like I watched the Fast 10 trailer for the new Fast and Furious movie, and I think I talked about this the other week. If you watch the new trailer, it looks like a 7-year-old with ADHD like was given a piece of paper and said, "Here, draw a bunch of pictures," and then they turned that into a Vin Diesel movie. And if you have 3 minutes, I'm going to send you the link so you can watch it, and you can just tell me. Just, I know you're going to go gamble, but I think you can watch the whole movie in 3 minutes of the trailer and be good. But you hate it. You being torture. and
Well,
me from 10 years ago would have thought it's the greatest movie ever.
and then so then compare that, right? Now think about Brokeback Mountain. Now, obviously, that is a topic that it was very controversial at the time. I would venture to say it's probably even still a little controversial, even 15 years later,
Mm-hmm.
because the topic and the graphic of some of the scenes, um, of that movie, and no one wants to believe that two cowboys could be gay. No
Yeah.
one wants to believe that they would turn down very attractive wives so they could be with each other, right? No one wants to believe that could be the case. Yet that movie won the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, if you're willing to go to a place where no one wants you to go to, then you get rewarded. if you if you stay kind of if you stay kind of away from that dark area that we don't really want to know that that's happening. Um, but if you stay in like the Fast and the Furious, you make a ton of money doing it that way.
Absolutely, so like I said, as we wrap up today's show, just food for thought. So if you have an old show that you've been watching on a streaming platform, and you realize that maybe it wouldn't fly if they redid it in today's standards, or something quirky that they were overtly covering up, like Barney's infidelities on a very wholesome show, we want to hear about it. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. If you have some great binge watching ideas for our EP, Tom, he has a reviews to do coming up. He's very adamant about that. So let's distract him by giving him something else to watch. Hit him up on Liquid_EP on Twitter and the Instagram.
Oh, that's awesome. That was good. Hey, good topic, my friend. Really good topic. And the wind didn't kill us. Isn't that
the
great?
wind did not kill us.
What does not kill us makes us stronger.
Absolutely.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We always appreciate you. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some Liquid Carnage.